Let's still take a look at the budget breakdown. Ajiri Glali. Okay, for you, key assumption for the 2020 budget estimates. This has been tagged budget of sustainable growth and job creation. What are the issues to consider here?
Well, I think what stands out first of all is that Mr. President gave a very clear instruction to all MDAs in the country that, look, we are not going to inject new capital projects into this budget until we have fully funded ongoing projects to ensure that they reach completion in the life of this administration. I think that was very key and historic. But looking at the figures, we have right now an aggregated expenditure total of about 10.33 trillion. We have about 8.1 trillion in projected revenue. It's important to note that out of the 8.1 trillion in projected revenue, that 68% is coming from non-oil sources, and that 32% is coming from oil, which means obviously our efforts at raising internally generated revenue and diversifying away from oil and gas is moving into effect. Now, I think very clearly, if we look at the numbers, there's a clear priority on infrastructure. We've seen 260 billion set aside, which is the highest capital allocation to the Ministry of Works and Housing, 127 billion to the Ministry of Transportation. Counterpart funding involved there is about 67 billion for three different railways, including Port Harcourt, Maiduguri, Lagos to Kano, and the new one, Abuja to Itakpe, which is going to link to Warri Seaport. So that's going on. Ministry of Aviation, again, about 50 billion. 10 billion of that has been allocated to the construction of the long overdue second runway at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport here in Abuja. But I think I want to address two critical things because I know time is running out. There have been some criticisms about the budget concerning health and education.
Yes.
Right now, the Ministry of Education budget is at 50 billion. The Ministry of Health budget is at 46 billion. And Nigerians have said that's not enough. And the federal government would agree, which is why you can't look at the ministry budgets in a silo. We have to factor in that in terms of education, for example, at the beginning of this year, we released nearly 200 billion naira through the TET fund to the Nigerian universities across the country. Within the UBEC, we've committed 111 billion in this 2020 budget to join with the 50 billion of the Ministry of Education. So I think if we understand that constitutionally, primary health and primary education are the functions of states. We know that federal resources are an intervention mechanism, and we have ensured that we have intervened effectively. In terms of health, obviously the Ministry of Health budget at 46 billion. We need to also understand that there's an allocation now for the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund at about 44 billion. You combine all of that together and you have over 90 billion in terms of federal allocation to health. Now, I think the larger question should be, what is it that each state is appropriating to health and education? Because ultimately, when you join those figures together with the federal, you'll now know what Nigeria is doing about health and education in the country. So a lot of different things being touched. I think it's clear that when Nigerians have raised the concern that, debt service is a bit too high at 2.45 trillion, the total capital expenditure, including the capital and the statutory transfers, is about 2.45 trillion, just marginally higher than the debt service. It's not about us having too high debt. The issue is about us having too low revenue. We have artificially low tax rates. Our VAT, we're fighting right now to get our VAT from 5% to 7.5%. In neighboring countries like Ghana, they're doing 18%. In some countries in Africa, 20%. So we need to adjust our tax rates to ensure we have the kind of revenue generation that will ensure that we can sustainably provide the infrastructure that will attract the industries, that will employ people, and that will ultimately expand the tax net in the country.
Well, we were talking about the VAT. We've had experts in Good Morning Nigeria who have also raised the issue as to whether there is indeed a conceptual clarification of VAT. It appears that VAT is being treated as sales tax rather than value added that is ordinarily supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that elsewhere, the references you were making to other African countries, or either neighbors or otherwise, that the kind of taxes that we have internally, those taxes do not necessarily apply in those other jurisdictions. So, how might the government win, if you like, this argument? Because there are also voices in the National Assembly that are saying, no, listen, we can't impose additional taxes
Right.
on Nigerians at this material time. So what then will be the conviction? Is it a matter of more efficient tax collection or just increasing the rate? Because the federal government itself will earn not more than 15% from VAT, which is statutory
An
receipt.
extremely important question, Mr. Kingsley. Thank you for that. First of all, I think when we look at VAT, one of the things that this president has stood for consistently is his concern for the bottom of our pyramid. And that reflects in the finance bill which was attached to the appropriation bill of 2020, which essentially stipulated that all of the exempted items are now being expanded to include items that are staples in the household of our most vulnerable segments of our population. All meats, all vegetables, all fruits, things like rice, yam, potatoes, water, salt, herbs, white bread, brown bread. All of these things have been specified as exempt from value-added tax collection. The second leg of that is he also put in an increase in the threshold of businesses being affected by the increase in VAT from 5 to 7.5%, as only those that have an annual profit turnover of 25 million naira or more. So all micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises in the country operating with less than a profit margin of 25 million annually are not going to be touched at all by this VAT increase. So at every turn, Mr. President has been very careful to ensure that he alleviates the burden on the most vulnerable. The last thing I will say is there's a lot of misinformation around the issue of tax collection and tolling on the roads, etc. This administration has been very clear that there will not be any new tolls on any roads that have not been newly reconstructed, and that as opposed to before where they were collecting cash, we are going to introduce cashless tolling solely for the maintenance of roads and not for internal revenue generation. So these are some of the misconceptions that we want to make sure are clarified with our people.
All right, thank you for clearing the air on that, as well as other areas. I'm afraid that's how much you can take on this area for budget 2020. Hope to revisit the issue very soon. Thank you very much, Mr. Ajiri Glale, Senior Special Assistant to the President of Public Affairs.
Thank you, Blessing. Thank you, Kingsley.
Okay, up next for us, time will just permit us a little for Sports Outlook.